The ring hit the tile like a bullet ricocheting through my kitchen. "My life is in pieces because of you," Brielle shouted, and her voice did that break I remembered from the first time she tried to sing alto in church. She was 26 now, but I could still see the baby lotion prints she used to leave on my skirts. I stood there in my apron with flour on my hands. The pecan pies were half-baked. The timer kept beeping like it was tattling on us. Keon was on the porch pretending not to listen, phone in his palm like a stage prop. His mama, Delphine, held her pearls in both hands and whispered, "Lord, take this burden. Loud enough for the Lord and my screen door both." "Brielle, baby," I said. "Sit down and hear the whole truth." "The whole truth?" Her mascara streaked into 2 black commas. "You called the bank. You called Pastor Nathan Merriweather. You embarrassed me in front of everybody." I wiped my hands on a towel and looked at my child the way a doctor looks at a chart. Something was wrong long before this minute. "You asked me to sign my house for a bridal lounge. Keon had you bring papers you didn't read. You hate him because he's not daddy," she snapped. Outside, thunder rolled. The oven timer screamed again. I turned it off, and the silence hurt worse. "Your father left you a trust," I said softly. "Keon tried to move it under his company. He submitted a power of attorney with your name in a hand I don't recognize. You're lying." On the porch, Keon's shadow turned. I reached into the bread drawer, slid out the envelope I'd hidden under old church fans, ledgers, screenshots, and my phone with the recording. My hand stopped shaking. "Press play then, Loretta," she dared me, using my name the way children do when strangers have been speaking in their ears. So I did. And the past walked out the speaker and sat right down at my kitchen table, asking for pie. "Before we go on, tell me where you're listening from. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories coming soon." I crouched and picked the ring up with a dish towel. Cold metal, warm grief. When I straightened, Keon slid in through the screen door with that smile he wears like cufflinks. "Let's all breathe," he said, spreading his hands. "We're family." "We're not family till vows," I answered. "And even then, family don't sign papers in a rush." Delphine's pearls clicked. "Sister Loretta, why you so determined to keep a black woman from her joy?" Brielle's shoulders shook. She wouldn't look at me. "Mama, just sign the collateral. We only need it to float the wedding vendors till the sponsorship hits." "Float is how folks drown," I said. Keon's eyes flicked to the towel in my hand. "I'll hold the ring. Till we clear the air?" he said, and it was slick, the way his thumb and finger pinched the diamond like a debt he already owned. "No," I said. "Yes," Brielle whispered. "I don't want it." I folded the towel around it tight as a prayer. "Then it stays with me till your heart comes home." His jaw moved once like a man chewing on a cuss word. Delphine reached for my elbow, and I stepped back. "Pastor Merriweather will mediate this," I said. "If your business is clean, sunlight won't sting." Keon's smile cracked just enough to show the steel underneath. "Sunlight burns thieves and liars," he said softly. I nodded. "Then we got nothing to fear." But even Jesus went into the wilderness before he started answering people. And I smelled wilderness all over my child's new life. A year earlier, we were crowded in Isaiah Green's office with plastic cups of lemon water and grief so new it still had his cologne in it. Eddie's will was simple as the man himself. House and restaurant stayed with me. Eddie kept the restaurant for home and the dock for legacy. The books for both lived on our kitchen table. The trust, college, home start, and seed money for any. Business went to Brielle with a rule he called the fence. No entanglements unless 2 signatures matched, mine and hers. Eddie had recorded a few notes during his chemo days. I hadn't listened then. I couldn't press play on a ghost. But I remembered his fingers shaking as he signed the codicil and squeezed my hand. "Don't let the name get pawned, Loretta. If they want in our house, they gotta knock through you." Now, sitting on our couch with the envelope in my lap and the kitchen timer still in my head, I thought about fences. Folks say fences keep love out. Eddie believed fences keep wolves from learning our doorbell. Brielle came by that night with red eyes and silence. She didn't look at the framed picture of her daddy on the mantel. "Keon says you're overreacting," she muttered. "We just need a cosign to get through vendor deposits." I nodded like a church mother with a peppermint. "We'll pay vendors direct if it's honest." Her face changed. Hope, then fear, then defiance. "Keon says vendor direct makes us look broke." "We look honest," I said. "That's a wealth you can't post." She left without hugging me. The door closed soft. I pressed my forehead to the wood and let the quiet speak. It said, "Watch the pressure. Count the days. Fences don't fail. People jump 'em." They came 2 days later with a binder. Delphine in cream, Keon in cologne, Brielle in apology. "We set out sweet tea anyway. Southerners feed even the folks coming to rob us. That's our way and our curse." "Our event concept is time-sensitive," Keon said, tapping a glossy page. "Brielle's bridal lounge, content studio up front, showroom in back. We open in 6 weeks if we execute." Delphine slid a highlighted sheet toward me. "All you gotta do is co-sign a line of credit. $250,000 short-term. Y'all got equity just sitting. Let it work." "Who's the borrower?" I asked. "Ward Estates LLC," Keon said easily. "We'll use Loretta's deed as temporary collateral. 30 days? Tops. After the wedding, sponsor funds settle. Everybody wins." "Everybody but my sleep," I said. "If it's for Brielle, why ain't Brielle the borrower?" Brielle's mouth opened. Closed. Delphine answered for her. "Because Ward Estates got established credit. This is how folks move in 2025, Sister Booker. You gon' hold your baby back 'cause you scared of paperwork?" I poured more tea so my hands had something to do besides slap a table. "Bring it to Isaiah," I said. "When he says yes, I'll consider it." Keon leaned in, voice dropping to the kind of soft men use when they're done pretending they ain't dangerous. "Vendors need deposits today. You either with us, or you a problem we solve another way." Brielle flinched barely. I saw it and tucked it away like a receipt. "Then I'm the problem," I said. "And I got a lawyer, a pastor, and a God of order." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "God helps those who help themselves." "God helps those who don't steal," I said back. Delphine's pearls clicked like a metronome counting down to something ugly. The papers arrived the next morning with a woman I'd never met, and a stamp that looked like it had seen more hotel rooms than courthouses. "Family friend," Delphine beamed. "She'll spare you that big law delay." I put on my readers and started at page 1. The header said, "Ward Estates revolving line," but the signature sheet showed, "Booker's Pies and Plates, collateral agreement." 2 different documents trying to marry without vows. "This header don't match," I said. "Clerical thing?" the notary chirped, already inking her stamp. "I can notarize intent." "Intent ain't law," I said, sliding the stack back. "Isaiah or nothing." Keon stared at the ceiling like he was asking for patience. "You're creating drama. I'm creating margins. So when folks push, the words don't bleed." The notary swallowed and packed up. Delphine smiled like women do right before they retaliate and call it righteousness. "We'll pray on it," she said. "Sometimes the enemy looks like concern. Sometimes it looks like a family friend with a rubber stamp," I answered, sweeter than I felt. After they left, I locked my door, then locked my pantry. I pulled Eddie's little brass key from a coffee can and held it till the teeth pressed time into my palm. "Talk to me, man," I whispered to his picture. "Talk to me through paper." On Sunday, I walked into Greater True Vine in my navy suit and funeral flats. The sanctuary air felt heavy with perfume and opinions. Sister Glasper hugged me too, long and asked too loud, "You okay, Loretta?" Which meant I heard everything. Delphine, the first lady of Greater True Vine and Keon's mama, floated down the aisle like a parade float. "Morning, Sister Booker." She squeezed my hand and let her smile talk. "I'm winning the room." Pastor Merriweather preached from Proverbs, the prudent see danger and take refuge. And I felt my heart climb into that verse and sit down. After benediction, the Women's Council cornered me with lemonade and concern. "Now we know you protective," Sister Glasper began. But Brielle groaned, and a man got a lead. "A good man," Delphine added, "pure sugar. Keon's just trying to give that child a future." "Future got receipts," I said gently. "Mine will have signatures too." Pastor eased in beside us, eyes kind, voice careful. "Loretta, mediation could help. Let's all meet in my office Tuesday. Bring whatever y'all need to be heard." Delphine folded her hands like a choir girl. "We'll bring truth." "I'll bring documents," I said. "They rarely lie." Outside, the sun burned so bright it hurt. I stood on the steps and let it sting me clean. Somebody had to leave church with a bruise. Better the lie than my child. By Monday morning, Brielle was a pressure washer on 2 legs. "Mama, the caterer needs $30,000 by noon, or he releases the date. Keon says you can wire from the restaurant account and we'll replace it when the sponsor hits Friday." "Who's the sponsor?" "Delphine's friend, Premier Bridal Media." I shook my head. "We'll pay the caterer directly." "Mama, I'll call him now. He gets paid. Nobody touches my deed or your daddy's tax ID." She stared like I'd slapped her. "You make me look broke." "Looking honest is how you stay solvent." She exhaled through her nose. "Fine. I'll tell Keon." 30 minutes later, Keon texted me himself from a number labeled Vendor Ops, Paid Award Payables. "Caterer doesn't accept third party. Need full amount by 12 hours. I called the caterer. He answered on the second ring. "Yes, ma'am. I take cashier's checks. Zelle or cash. And I don't know no ward payables." I sent the money from my account straight to his. Then I texted a screenshot to Brielle and one to my own phone with the subject line, "When they say vendor won't take direct." Keon didn't reply. Delphine did. "Sister Booker, you just embarrassed your child to a vendor. The Lord will judge that spirit." I typed back, "And a bank will judge yours." I didn't send it. The Lord knows drafts count. Aunt Maxine came over in her house shoes and her mouth ready. "He's got that slick whisper," she said, pouring herself coffee. Brielle always loved a whisper. We pulled invoices from drawers and email printouts from a shoebox she called the bucket. 2 versions for the same flowers, 2 totals for the same venue. "Padding," Maxine muttered. "If I see a creative fee, I'm throwing something." We ended up in the pantry I'd kept locked since Eddie died. I pressed the brass key into the old lock. Inside the biscuit tin where he used to keep tip money sat a little black voice recorder and a folded page with Eddie's handwriting. "If you're reading this, I ain't here to ask questions. Play it for the folks who pretend not to hear." I pressed play. Static first. Then Keon's voice, crisp as brand new bills. "Once her deed's on the line, we pull 50 for the venue, 80 for the lounge build-out, 50 into Ward Estates, liquidity optics." A woman answered. Not Delphine. Somebody I didn't know. "And the mother?" "We ice her out with church pressure. She'll break. They always break." Maxine closed her eyes. "God, I asked for evidence. You done dropped a whole river." I paused the tape and leaned into the shelves. The flour canister smelled like sundaes. Eddie never kept his sugar where folks expected. "Okay," I whispered to the pantry walls. "Okay, Winston Eddie Booker. I'll be your fence and your fighter." I wore my Navy suit again and took myself to Jefferson First. Ms. Carr, the loan officer, had the soft eyes of somebody who's seen too many folks sign the wrong thing. "Ms. Booker, we did get an attempted power of attorney submission on your daughter's trust." My mouth went dry. "Who submitted?" She slid a copy across the desk. The signature said Brielle Booker, but the B had a tilt my child never had. My palm started to sweat. There were also 2 call-ins from a Mr. Ward. Daily. Urgent. He referenced a sponsor deposit and requested a title hold on your property for temporary collateral. We declined, she said calmly, like she was saying the sky is blue and I'm proud of you too. Do you record those calls? I asked. We do, she smiled. And we save them for counsel. I showed her Eddie's codicil. I told her about the family friend notary. She took notes like recipes. I'll flag the trust in your deed, she said. Any transfer attempt triggers compliance. When I stood to go, she half whispered, I've seen this pattern. They'll move the wedding up. They always move the wedding up. I walked out into the bright Birmingham sun and felt something solid in my spine. Maybe the Lord don't change folks' hearts on my timeline, but he sure lines up a bank top to bottom. I called the caterer from the parking lot and paid him direct. 10 minutes later, a new invoice hit my phone. Same logo, different routing number labeled Ward Payables. I forwarded both to myself under the subject line. When a vendor has two wallets, the florist's quote said $7,400. Delphine's consolidated packet said $11,900 with a line called Creative Handling. I asked the florist if creativity meant cash. She laughed, then sent me a corrected invoice. I paid the flowers. I did not pay the creativity. The venue manager swore they don't accept third party. I showed her a screenshot of her own payment portal and the Zelle confirmation with her business name spelled right. Then whose Ward Estates? She asked. An allergy, I said. We're cutting it from the menu. By sundown, I had 3 receipts, 3 screenshots, and one new certainty. Wolves hate direct deposit. Delphine threw a party at a boutique hotel like we were royal, and the crown was on layaway. Edison bulbs, white roses, a step and repeat that said Booker X Ward like somebody had printed a lie big enough to live in. I wore black in silence. Keon took the mic. Partnership is a ministry, he said, voice velvet. With Loretta's blessing, he looked right at me. We're expanding the Booker name. He lowered the mic just enough for me to hear. Friday, 10 a.m., county clerk's office. Don't be late for our forever. Phones went up like praise hands. I pressed record in mine. Delphine floated over with a flute of champagne. Sister Booker, by this time next year you'll be running the lounge with your daughter. Let it be easy. Easy is for things that weigh nothing, I said. This name got bricks in it. Keon clapped a hand to Eddie's old vendor from the fish market. House is as good as ours, old man. He laughed, and cameras flashed. Before the speeches ended, Keon slid a new ring onto Brielle's finger for the cameras. Bigger stone, louder lie. The first ring stayed in my purse, wrapped in towel and truth. The vendor glanced at me and shrugged his eyebrows like you heard your son-in-law. I smiled for the photos. I smiled till my cheeks hurt. Some lies die quickest when their pictures look too perfect to trust. We were supposed to look at SUVs for bridal transport. I was supposed to be the mother who signs and smiles and wears taupe. Instead, the sun sat mean over the asphalt and my tongue went to work. We're doing vendor direct from now on, I told Brielle in the shade of a balloon arch. And Isaiah reviews everything. Keon's jaw flexed. You're sabotaging deals. Deals built on my deed and my daughter's ignorance aren't deals, I said. They're traps with monograms. Delphine stepped forward, voice turned to syrup. Loretta, you are dangerously close to elder abuse with all this controlling behavior. I could report you. I laughed once, short and wrong. Elder abuse? You stood in my kitchen and tried to stamp my life away. Brielle covered her face. Stop, all of you. Keon pulled a folded letter from his pocket and handed it to me like a man passing a bill at a bar. This is a cease and desist. You will stop interfering in Ward Estates business and refrain from defamation, or we will seek damages. I read it slow. The words stacked like a staircase leading down to somewhere nobody comes back from. I folded it and put it in my purse on top of the ring wrapped in towel. Go ahead and seek, I said, voice calm. And I'll seek the shepherd who finds lost things. We'll see who arrives first. Brielle started crying so hard a salesman brought her water. Keon put a hand on her back and she flinched. It was small, but I saw it. I waited until the house had the good kind of quiet. Dishwasher hum, clock tick, the ice maker thinking about its life. Then I pulled Eddie's brass pantry key off the nail by the broom. The pantry still smelled like cinnamon and motor oil because he used to fix little things at the kitchen table and swear he'd clean up tomorrow. Tomorrow is a thief. Tonight, I intended to rob it back. Behind the sack of cornmeal was his biscuit tin, the one with the dent from Thanksgiving '09 when he dropped it laughing. Inside, under the loose change, lay a second key I'd never seen. Thin, nickel, with a red thread tied through the head. On a folded index card in Eddie's slanted print. Doc. My mouth went dry. There was also a little brown envelope, Photomart 1 hour, and a thumb drive taped to a church fan from homecoming. I set it all on the kitchen table like communion, then dug deeper. At the bottom, a steno page, names and arrows, Ward Estates LLC, D.W. Bridal Holdings, Delphine Charity O. Beside each, a number, a date, and a single word, float, double, burner. My heart beat slow and hard like I'd been jogging in a dream. The voice recorder from before was tucked in the corner. I clicked it on. Static. Then Eddie's voice, tired but still the man who could lift a sofa by himself. If you're hearing me, Retta, I couldn't finish the fence. Follow the key. And never sign a loan. Another click. New audio. Wind, gulls, a truck backing somewhere. A man cleared his throat. Keon's voice, shorter than his suits. Once her deed posts, we move fast. Before vows. 30 days tops. If the mother balks, Delphine's got church heat. A second man, low and bored. And the trust? Already got the POA packet. We'll file the clean one after the wedding. Optics. I paused it so hard my thumb hurt. Outside, a train moaned its long, sad note through Birmingham like the city itself was warning me to hurry up. I laid the red thread key in my palm. Okay, Winston Eddie Booker, I whispered, hearing him laugh at the formality. I'll follow the key. For the first time in weeks, my fear stepped back and made room for something with a backbone. I bagged the recorder, the steno page, the photos, the USB, everything, and set Aunt Maxine's number to speed dial, Isaiah's to the next slot. When a plan arrives, you don't make it wait on you. By morning, Aunt Maxine had already called her cousin's niece's friend, a woman named Raina Rowe, ex-bank investigator turned private eye. She showed up wearing sneakers, carrying a laptop that looked like it could solve murders on its own. We spread the evidence across my kitchen table. Eddie's steno notes, the voice recording, the Photomart envelope, and that little nickel key with the red string. Raina listened to 5 minutes of the tape, then blew out a long whistle. Ma'am, this ain't sloppy fraud. This is orchestrated theft. They're using LLCs to launder vendor deposits, Ward Estates, D.W. Bridal Holdings, and a church charity front run by Delphine Ward. It's all the same pattern. Can you prove it? I asked. Raina smiled. Honey, I can map it. She opened her laptop and started typing. Lines connected names to companies, companies to bank accounts, accounts to shell addresses, all looping back to a P.O. box in Montgomery. Every time your daughter's name shows up, she said, tapping the screen, it's attached to a forged signature. These people are drowning, and they're trying to use your house as a life raft. Aunt Maxine crossed her arms. So what do we do now? Raina turned the screen toward me. First, freeze everything you can. Your deed, her trust, your EIN. Second, don't confront 'em yet. They'll sense it. You let 'em walk themselves into a corner, then close the door. She printed out a copy of the map, a web of greed built on my family's name. In the center, 3 circled words, the bride's money. I touched the red string key in my pocket. And the doc? That's your smoking gun, Raina said. If Eddie hid something there, it's proof of how deep they went. You ready to find out? I looked out the window where the magnolia trees leaned toward the light, same as they always had. Ready, I said. I've been ready since the pies burned. Raina grinned, packing up her case. Good. Then let's go fish what they thought they buried. The Booker & Sons shipping dock had been silent since Eddie passed. One long rusted stretch of corrugated tin and ghosts. The scent of oil, salt, and pine sap still clung to the air. Raina's headlights cut through the fog as we parked beside Eddie's old office, the one with his initials still carved into the doorframe. "Red string," she murmured, pointing at the small boat tied up near the storage shed. The same red thread was looped around the padlock chain like a signal from beyond. My hands trembled as I slid the nickel key into the lock. It clicked open smoother than I expected. Eddie's work never failed. Inside was dust, a lantern, and a gray metal box tucked under an overturned crate. Raina knelt and opened it with her pocket tool. Inside were stacks of files, receipts, 2 flash drives, and one small black notebook labeled Ward Affairs. I flipped through the pages. Each entry was meticulous, written in Eddie's square hand. Jan 3. Keon requested ledger access for vendor review. Declined. Feb 14. Delphine met with banker. Said trust update necessary. Feb 21. Received call from Isaiah Green confirming POA attempt. March 10th. Threat via phone. You'll regret standing in our way. Recorded on line 2. Raina's jaw clenched. He documented everything. Then we hit the page marked April 12th, 2 weeks before the car crash. Eddie had written, "If anything happens to me, look under the dock." Left a flash drive labeled Dove. It has every transaction tied to Ward Estates and the auxiliary fund. Loretta will know what to do. I reached under the dock's first beam and found it, taped in plastic, still dry after all these months. I held it like it was holy. Raina exhaled. "That's your bulletproof vest. We get this to Isaiah, they're cooked." But before we could leave, a motion light flared near the entrance. A black SUV sat parked by the chain gate, engine humming. Raina whispered, "You expecting company?" I shook my head. "Only angels and accountants." The driver's door opened. A figure stepped out, tall, polished, familiar. Keon Ward, in a navy coat and church shoes, walking slow, deliberate, like he'd come to bless a grave. Raina grabbed my arm. "Loretta, get behind the crate." I slid the flash drive into my purse and whispered, "No. Let him see me." Keon's voice floated across the dock. "Evening, Mama Booker. You should have stayed in your kitchen." The wind hissed through the metal siding. "And you," I said, "should have stayed in church." He smiled, dark and easy. "Church is for sinners, ma'am." "You raised one." Raina's hand hovered near her phone. "Ready to call someone. The police. A miracle. Maybe both." I looked at the man who'd stolen my daughter's heart and tried to steal my family's name. "You about to learn," I said, "that the Lord may forgive thieves, but he don't protect 'em from Southern mothers with evidence." Keon took a step closer. "Evidence can disappear." Raina flicked on her camera phone. The flash blinded him for a second, just long enough for me to slip past the crate toward my car. By the time he blinked, I was halfway up the dock stairs, the flash drive burning hot in my purse. By the time we reached Isaiah's downtown office, the sun had cracked the horizon wide open, gold light spilling over the courthouse dome like judgment itself was coming awake. I still clutched the purse with the flash drive inside, afraid to let it out of my sight. Isaiah met us at the door, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loose. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. "Worse," I answered. "A man who thinks he can rewrite God's laws with forged paperwork." Raina slid the drive onto his desk. "This has everything. Wire transfers, fake LLCs, and an audio file of Keon planning the trust forgery." Isaiah plugged it in, eyes narrowing as folders opened. "Sweet mercy," he murmured. They were laundering Eddie's shipping contracts through Delphine's church fund and rerouting profits to an offshore account. "If this gets to the DA before that marriage license is filed, we can freeze every cent." I felt my throat tighten. "Then we better move fast because I just saw Keon's car at the county clerk's office." Isaiah looked up sharply. "They're trying to rush the marriage, make her his wife before the financials hit. Once that happens, she's legally bound to his debt." Raina snapped her fingers. "Then we serve them in the courthouse." Isaiah nodded, already grabbing his briefcase. "Loretta, you coming?" I straightened my coat. "You think I'd miss watching a liar choke on his own vows?" We tore out of the office and down the courthouse steps as the bells began to toll 10 o'clock, the exact hour Brielle's wedding license was set to be signed. Each toll echoed like a countdown, and I swear I could feel Eddie walking beside me, whispering, "Don't let them take her. Retta, not our girl." The courthouse lobby smelled of perfume and floor polish, a strange mix of holiness and sin. At the far end, beneath a mural of Lady Justice, Brielle stood in a white, tea-length dress, radiant, nervous, holding a manila envelope like it was her future. Beside her, Keon wore a gray suit and the calm grin of a man who believed the devil kept good time. Delphine stood behind them, clutching her pearl clutch and whispering in his ear. "Loretta," Raina murmured. "That's them." Isaiah motioned to the deputy clerk. "Hold those papers," he said, sliding his badge from his pocket. "This marriage is under legal injunction," the clerk blinked. "I what?" Before she could speak again, Brielle saw me. Her eyes widened, relief and confusion fighting for space. "Mama, what's going on?" Keon's smile didn't crack. "Mrs. Booker, this ain't the time for dramatics. We're getting married." "Not today, you ain't," I said, stepping forward. "Not with a forged trust, a stolen company, and my husband's money bleeding through your fake charities," Delphine gasped. "How dare you accuse us?" Isaiah opened the folder, dropping printed ledgers on the counter. "We have recordings, signatures, and routing slips connecting you to Ward Estates and 3 shell accounts in Panama." Keon's hand twitched toward Brielle's, but she pulled away. "What's he talking about, Keon?" He tried to laugh, too loud. "Baby, this is all confusion." Raina raised her phone, playing the recording of his voice saying, "Once she signs, the money's ours." The room went silent. Even the ceiling fan seemed to stop spinning. Brielle's hand trembled as she took off her ring. "You ruined everything," she whispered, then hurled it at him, the metal clinking across the marble like a verdict. The ring rolled across the marble floor, coming to rest against the heel of a deputy's boot. The sound of it was louder than thunder in that hushed courthouse. Keon reached for Brielle's arm, his voice trembling now. "Baby, listen to me." She yanked away so hard his cufflink snapped loose. "Don't touch me," she cried. "You used me for money?" Delphine lunged forward, face flushed with panic. "Stop this nonsense. You'll embarrass yourselves." I stepped between them. Every ounce of grief turned into purpose. "No, Delphine. You're embarrassed because your empire just fell apart." Isaiah handed the deputy clerk the printed evidence. "These files have been verified and logged. I recommend immediate detainment until the DA arrives." Raina, calm as Sunday rain, pulled up the backup drive from her bag. "There's more where that came from. Offshore accounts, falsified deeds, everything tied to Keon and Delphine Ward." Keon's composure cracked. "You think you can frame me? This whole thing's a setup. Then explain your own voice on the recording," I said, hitting play again. His tone filled the hallway. "She signs, the trust moves. We're in the clear by Monday." Brielle sank against a bench, crying quietly. "Mama, I didn't know." I swear. I knelt beside her. "I know, baby. You were raised to trust too deep. But love don't blind us unless we close our own eyes." 2 deputies moved in to cuff Keon and Delphine. She spat curses under her breath while he kept repeating, "This ain't over." As they led them away, the courthouse doors opened wide, reporters already crowding outside. Cameras flashing, Isaiah whispered, "Loretta, this is about to go public." I looked up, steady as steel. "Good. Let the whole South see what happens when greed marries deceit." By sunset, the whole county was talking. The Montgomery Gazette ran a headline so big it might as well have been carved in stone. "Church leader and business heir arrested in wedding fraud scandal." I read it twice, my hands trembling over the kitchen table where Eddie's coffee cup still sat in its usual place. They'd taken Keon and Delphine to county lockup for questioning, and Isaiah promised more charges were coming by morning. Wire fraud, embezzlement, attempted coercion, maybe worse. But I couldn't feel triumph yet. Brielle sat on the porch, knees pulled to her chest, eyes swollen from hours of crying. The porch light haloed her like she was back to being my little girl after all the chaos. She looked up as I came out. "Mama, I didn't see it." I thought Keon loved me. I sat beside her, careful with my words. He loved your name, baby. Loved what it could buy. Men like that don't marry hearts. They marry opportunity. She wiped her eyes. Was Daddy trying to warn us? I nodded. He left us a trail, and we followed it just in time. Raina came out with her laptop bag slung over her shoulder. Isaiah's filing for a full asset freeze. But Delphine's lawyer already calling in favors. They'll fight back, Loretta. People with money always do. Then we'll fight longer, I said. Brielle took my hand. I want to testify, Mama, against both of them. I need folks to know what really happened. I squeezed her hand. Then you'll tell the truth in that courtroom. Just like your daddy would have wanted. Inside, the phone kept ringing. Reporters, neighbors, even church members looking for gossip. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel afraid to answer. The next morning came quiet and wrong, the kind of quiet that hums before a storm. The courthouse hearing was set for noon, but Isaiah called just after sunrise. His voice carried the edge of trouble. Loretta, he said, we've got a problem. Someone posted bail for Delphine around midnight. My stomach dropped. Who? Anonymous wire transfer. Likely offshore. She's gone to ground. No address, no ankle monitor ping. I turned toward the window. Down the street, a black sedan idled too long at the corner before rolling away. You think she's coming here? Isaiah paused. Wouldn't put it past her. Be careful. I'll have a deputy swing by until the trial. After we hung up, I checked every lock, every curtain. Brielle was asleep on the couch, clutching her robe like a child. The sight of her made my chest ache and my resolve harden. I brewed coffee, then noticed a manila envelope slipped under the front door. Inside was a single photograph. Me, Raina, and Brielle outside the courthouse yesterday, and a note written in looping cursive. Drop the charges or you'll end up like Eddie. D. The smell of cheap perfume clung to the paper. I recognized it. Delphine's gardenia mist, the same one she wore to church every Sunday. Raina arrived 15 minutes later, eyes wide when she saw the note. She's trying to rattle you, but this crosses into intimidation. That's a felony. Then let's make sure she gets one more to add to her collection, I said, tucking the letter into a plastic sleeve. She thinks fear can make me back down, but she forgot. I buried my husband and I'm still standing. Outside, thunder cracked over Birmingham. It sounded like justice clearing its throat. That night, the rain came sideways, pounding the tin roof like a warning drum. I'd just turned off the lamp when headlights flashed across my window, slow, deliberate, like someone casing the house. Brielle stirred on the sofa. Mama, you expecting someone? No, baby, I whispered. Stay here. I stepped onto the porch with Eddie's old shotgun in hand, the one he swore was just for varmints. The air smelled like mud and fear. A black SUV idled at the curb, engine low. Then the passenger window rolled down, just enough for me to see the glint of metal. Get down! I shouted. A gunshot cracked the night. Splinters from the porch rail stung my face. Brielle screamed inside. I fired once in the air. Pure noise, pure defiance. The SUV jerked into gear, tires spinning mud as it tore down the road. Seconds later, Raina's headlights swung into the driveway, siren wailing on her dash. She jumped out, weapon drawn. You hit? I'm fine, I said, breath shaking. But they meant business. She kicked over an empty shell casing near the mailbox. Professional. 9mm, no prints! Brielle came running out, barefoot and crying. Mama, they tried to kill you. I held her tight. No, baby. They tried to scare us. Big difference. Isaiah arrived minutes later with a patrol unit behind him. We'll file this as an attempted hit. This ain't intimidation anymore. It's murder for hire. I looked toward the wet road where the taillights had vanished. Delphine's out there pulling strings. She wants me to drop the case. Isaiah nodded grimly. Then she's already lost. Only the guilty get desperate. Lightning cracked over the pecan trees, lighting up Eddie's portrait through the window. I could almost hear his voice. Hold your ground, Retta, and I would. That night the house breathed like a tired animal. Slow, shallow, unsure it wanted the next lungful. I made coffee and didn't drink it. Brielle slept on the couch with the lamp still on like a child bargaining with the dark. I stood in Eddie's pantry with the brass key pressed into my palm until the teeth left little half-moons. I could end it here. Drop the charges. Sell the restaurant. Let the city call me stubborn for 5 more news cycles, then let the noise move on to somebody else's ruin. Maybe that's what peace is. Silence you buy with the truth you bury. I opened the biscuit tin and found the steno page again. Eddie's square letters didn't blink. Never sign alone. I'm tired, Winston, I said to the shelves. I am so tired. The house popped the way old houses do when they're remembering storms they survived. The clock ticked. Somewhere outside, a train moaned its long note over Birmingham. None of it asked me to be brave. It only asked me to be honest. I set the key on the table. I set my fear beside it. All right, I whispered. We finished the fence at dawn. When the lamp clicked off, the dark wasn't smaller. I was steadier. 2 days after the shooting, the sheriff stationed a cruiser out front. Reporters prowled the street, hungry for sound bites, but I wasn't giving them one. I'd already said my piece, in court, not on camera. Brielle sat at the kitchen table, head bowed over a Bible she hadn't opened since childhood. Mama, she whispered, how does somebody keep hating after all this? 'Cause hate's the last thing they think they can control, I said. But even hate runs out of gas when the truth catches up. I saw her first in the courthouse ladies' room. Hours before the warrants came through. No pearls, no audience. Just a woman at a mirror with her wig slightly crooked and her hands not quite steady. She dabbed at the corner of one eye and missed. For a second our eyes met in the glass. Pride tried to stand up in hers. Grief yanked it back down. She fixed the wig, lifted her chin, and walked out righteous. The paper towels in the bin trembled after she left. Raina burst through the back door, hair damp from the rain. Delphine's on the move, she said. One of my contacts spotted her car outside a motel off Route 11. She's meeting someone, tall man, ex-security detail from her church days. Likely the one who tried to shoot you. My pulse steadied instead of spiking. Then let's end it. Isaiah arrived minutes later with 2 deputies. We have warrants, he said. But Retta, you stay here. It's dangerous, I shook my head. She took my husband. Tried to take my child. I'll see this finished. At the motel, lightning flickered across the parking lot. Through the window, we saw Delphine pacing, her wig crooked, her silk robe damp with sweat. The man beside her handed her a pistol wrapped in cloth. Isaiah signaled the deputies. Go! Doors burst open. Shouts filled the air. Delphine fired once, wild and desperate, but the bullet hit the mirror instead. The deputies pinned her to the floor as the gun skidded toward my feet. Delphine looked up at me, eyes wild. You think you won, Loretta? She hissed. You just made yourself a widow twice. I knelt, steady. No, Delphine. I made myself free. The motel smelled like bleach and old sin. Rain drummed the roof as deputies dragged Delphine to her feet, her wrists clamped tight in silver cuffs. She looked smaller now, her fancy wig askew, her lipstick smeared. The perfume that once filled church pews souring in the damp air. Isaiah read her rights while Raina boxed up the pistol and documents scattered across the bed. This here's our smoking gun, Raina said. Contract payments to a man named Bryce Maddox. Same caliber as the shell from your porch, Loretta. I met Delphine's glare. So you really did hire somebody to finish me off, she sneered. You took what should have been mine. I gave this church 20 years of loyalty, and they left me scraps. You think I'd let a seamstress's daughter take my empire? I stepped closer, my voice low but steady. You didn't lose an empire, Delphine. You lost your soul, somewhere between greed and jealousy. For a moment, her mask cracked. The tears that came weren't repentance. They were rage curdled into pity. You think that girl loves you after all this? She blames you. Wait till she turns, Isaiah intervened. Enough. You can talk to your lawyer. Delphine spat on the floor as they let her out. You got lucky, Loretta. But luck runs out. When the door slammed shut, the room went still. The thunder outside rolled like the earth itself was exhaling. Raina handed me a small black notebook Delphine had dropped. Inside were notes. Payment schedules, forged letters, and one chilling line written in red ink. If Loretta won't sign, silence her before trial. I closed it and looked at Isaiah. She just signed her own sentence. The rain finally broke by dawn, leaving the courthouse soaked in gold light and silence. Raina, Isaiah, and I carried the sealed boxes into the evidence room, the same courthouse where Delphine had once strutted like she owned the world. Now her name was written in black ink on every label. Isaiah signed the chain of custody forms with slow precision. This, Mrs. Booker, is what justice looks like before the gavel drops. I ran my hand over one of the boxes, the one marked Exhibit C, Audio plus Ledger Records. It felt heavier than paper should. Inside were months of Eddie's handwriting, his careful notes, the audio where Keon bragged about manipulating the trust. His voice still made my skin crawl. Raina set the last folder on the table. These files connect every dollar Delphine touched. We've got offshore accounts, shell companies, false church donations, and the hitman payment trail. The DA's office said this could become a federal case. Brielle stood in the doorway, pale but resolute. "So it's really over?" she asked. I turned to her. "Not yet, baby. Now comes the part where we stand up in front of everybody and tell the truth." She nodded slowly. "Then I'm ready. Daddy deserves that much." Isaiah locked the room behind us and handed me a duplicate key. "Keep this," he said. "You earned it." As we walked out, the courthouse bell struck 8, the same bell that had tolled on her ruined wedding day. I looked up toward the sky. "Eddie, we got her cornered now." Raina smiled faintly. "You sure did, ma'am. And when the trial starts, we'll make sure the whole county knows what kind of woman Delphine Ward really was." The night before the trial felt endless. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ribs. I sat at the kitchen table with a single lamp burning, surrounded by papers, witness statements, photos, transcripts. Eddie's ledger with his familiar pen strokes curling steady and sure. Brielle came in wearing her robe, her face pale in the lamplight. "Can't sleep," she whispered. "Neither can I," said, sliding her a cup of chamomile. "Tomorrow's heavy, baby. You sure you're ready?" She nodded slowly. "It's not just about testifying. It's about facing what I let happen. I brought that man into our family." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Keon fooled a lot of folks, not just you. He studied what people wanted, love, comfort, security, and he sold it back wrapped in lies. But you survived him. That's what matters now." Her lip trembled. "And Delphine?" I sighed. "Delphine's been poisoning hearts long before she tried to poison mine. Tomorrow, we drain that poison in open court." The grandfather clock struck midnight, one hollow chime after another. Outside, thunder rolled low, promising another southern storm. Raina texted, "Security confirmed for morning. We'll escort y'all to the courthouse at 8. I looked at Brielle. "You remember what Daddy used to say before a hard day?" She smiled faintly. "Do it scared, but do it right." "That's it," I said. "We'll walk in tomorrow scared, but righteous." When she went to bed, I sat a while longer, staring at Eddie's photo on the mantel. "We're almost there, my love," I whispered. "Tomorrow they hear your truth, outside." Lightning split the clouds open like a curtain before a show. The courthouse steps gleamed wet from the night's rain. But the sky above Birmingham was clean and blue, the kind of morning that dared you to believe in justice. Reporters lined the walkway, shouting questions, camera shutters snapping like locust wings. Brielle clutched my arm as we climbed the marble stairs. "Mama, I don't know if I can do this." "Yes, you can," I said, steady but soft. "You ain't walking in there as a victim, baby. You're walking in as evidence." Inside, the courtroom smelled of varnish and fear. Delphine sat at the defense table, dressed in a gray suit that tried to hide her fall from grace. Her wig was perfect again, but her eyes were not. They flicked from me to Brielle, then to the jury like a snake searching for an opening. Isaiah leaned over to us. "We go first." Raina's waiting in the hallway with the digital files and recordings. "Just tell the truth. The rest will speak for itself." When I took the stand, the oath felt heavy in my chest. The prosecutor handed me Eddie's ledger. "Mrs. Booker, can you identify this?" "Yes, sir," I said. "My husband's handwriting. Every number in there is his honesty on paper, and every lie of theirs laid bare beside it." Delphine smirked, whispering something to her lawyer, but I kept my eyes forward. Brielle's turn came next. She trembled, but her voice was clear. "They used me, Your Honor. My name, my marriage, my love, all for money." The courtroom was silent except for her sob. I reached for her hand as she stepped down, whispering, "You did good, baby." Delphine's gaze burned through us like acid. But the balance had already shifted. The truth was on record, and the tide wasn't turning back. By the third day of trial, the air inside that courtroom was thick as syrup. Everyone could feel it, the sense that something irreversible was about to happen. The defense had one last shot to shake us, and they aimed their fire straight at me. Delphine's lawyer, a thin man with too much cologne and not enough conscience, paced in front of the witness stand. "Mrs. Booker," he began, his tone oiled smooth, "isn't it true that you hold resentment toward my client because your late husband chose to remarry her?" I met his eyes. "Sir, I hold resentment toward no one. But I do hold evidence, and it's sitting right there in those exhibits you keep pretending not to see." A low murmur rippled through the audience. He smirked. "And yet your entire case rests on documents your husband supposedly left behind. Isn't it possible you fabricated them to secure your daughter's inheritance?" Isaiah shot up from his seat. "Objection, Your Honor." "Sustained," the judge said firmly. "Counselor, watch your tone." But Delphine leaned forward, eyes glinting. "Tell him the truth, Loretta. You never could stand that Eddie loved me, could you?" Her voice sliced through the silence like glass. I stood despite the judge's warning look. "Eddie loved decency, Delphine. Something you traded for greed a long time ago?" The gallery gasped. Even the stenographer's hands froze for a moment. The judge struck the gavel. "Order!" Isaiah turned toward the bench. "Your Honor, I believe that outburst just proved motive better than any exhibit could." Delphine's face twisted into something feral. For the first time since it all began, I saw fear in her eyes. Not of the law, but of the truth finally catching her. The courtroom had that strange stillness that comes before something heavy falls. Delphine sat stiff at the defense table, her knuckles white against the wood. Her lawyer whispered frantically in her ear, but she wasn't listening anymore. Her eyes were locked on me and Brielle like we'd stolen her reflection. The prosecutor rose. "Your Honor, the state would like to submit one final exhibit, an audio recording recovered from the defendant's motel room at the time of her arrest." Delphine's head snapped up. "You can't!" The judge cut her off. "Overruled. Proceed." The speakers crackled to life, and the room filled with Delphine's own voice, cold, furious, unmistakable. "She thinks she's safe with those files. If the Bookers testify, I'll make sure neither one of them walks out of that courtroom alive." A gasp rippled through the gallery. Even her lawyer paled. The prosecutor folded his hands. "Mrs. Ward, is that your voice on this recording?" Delphine didn't answer. Her mouth opened, then closed again, like a snake realizing it had swallowed its own tail. "Your Honor," Isaiah said. Standing tall, "The state rests." The judge nodded slowly, eyes heavy with disappointment. "So do I." Delphine slumped in her chair, tears streaking the makeup that once made her untouchable. The gavel hit once, sharp, final. Court is adjourned until sentencing. As the deputies approached to take her back into custody, Delphine turned to me, voice trembling, half whisper, half curse. "You may have won this round, Loretta, but you'll never wash his blood off your hands." I stood, unflinching. "His blood ain't on my hands, Delphine. It's what keeps me standing." The sky over Birmingham hung low and gray the morning the verdict came down. Folks filled every seat in the courthouse. Neighbors, reporters, even a few church members who'd once called Delphine First Lady. The air smelled of rain and cheap perfume. Like judgment dressed in Sunday best, Brielle sat beside me, clutching my hand so tight I could feel her pulse through my bones. Isaiah stood near the bench, calm but watchful. Across the aisle, Delphine looked hollowed out. No pearls, no powder, just a woman stripped down to her truth. The jury filed in. 12 faces, 12 lives about to decide the rest of hers. The foreman stood, paper trembling in his grip. On the count of fraud, we find the defendant, Delphine Ward, guilty. A murmur swept through the room. On the count of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. The last word echoed like thunder rolling down the pews of a quiet church. Delphine didn't flinch. She stared ahead, lips pressed into a line that might have once been a prayer. Brielle began to cry, quietly at first, then harder, until her shoulders shook. I held her close and whispered, "It's over now, baby. Daddy can rest." The judge thanked the jury, then turned his gaze toward Delphine. "Mrs. Ward's sentencing will be scheduled for next week. Until then, you are remanded to the custody of the state." The bailiff took her arm. As she was led away, Delphine looked back one last time. Her eyes were empty, not angry, not scared, just lost. Outside, the bells of St. Mary's began to ring, slow and solemn. For the first time in a long while, I let myself breathe all the way down. A week later, the courthouse was quieter, stripped of reporters and noise, just the echo of footsteps and the weight of finality. The storm that had hovered for months was about to break. Delphine Ward sat at the defense table, wrists chained, wearing the same gray suit she'd been arrested in. Her hair was flattened, her eyes dull, but that old pride still flickered in the corners, the kind that refused to die easy. The judge entered. Court will now reconvene for sentencing in the case of the state versus Delphine Ward. Isaiah stood first. Your Honor, the people request maximum sentencing. The defendant's crimes were deliberate: financial exploitation, deception, and premeditated violence. She not only defrauded the deceased's estate, but attempted to destroy what was left of this family. The judge nodded. Noted. Mrs. Ward, do you wish to speak before I pass sentence? Delphine rose slowly, her shackles rattling. You think you won, she rasped, eyes cutting toward me. You think the world's clean because I'm in chains. But dirt don't wash off that easy, Loretta. Your husband's blood's still on your porch, your name still whispered in gossip. You'll never outrun it. Her words slithered through the room like smoke. I stood anyway. You're right, Delphine. The blood's there. But it's his love that keeps me standing where you can't. The judge's gavel came down once, sharp and sure. Delphine Ward, for your crimes, this court sentences you to life imprisonment without parole. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Delphine's shoulders sagged, and for the first time, she looked human, small, frightened, finished. As they led her away, she leaned close when passing me and whispered, You got lucky, but not for long. Her breath was cold against my ear. That night after sentencing, the house felt too big, like the silence had taken on a body of its own. Brielle had gone to bed early, worn out from tears and relief. I sat alone on the porch, a cup of coffee cooling in my hands, staring at the same patch of gravel where Delphine's hired gun had once stood. You got lucky, but not for long. Her voice still rang in my ear like a bad hymn that wouldn't stop echoing. I wanted to shake it off, but it lingered. Not fear exactly, just unfinished business. Raina's headlights swept across the yard. She parked, stepped out, and joined me with her usual quiet confidence. Thought you might be up, she said. How's Brielle? Sleeping. She deserves that peace, I said. But me? I keep hearing her voice, that whisper. Raina nodded, setting down a folder. Then you'll want to see this. Inside was a short report. Delphine Ward found unconscious in county custody pending transfer to state, possible heart failure. Transferred to county hospital under guard. She's alive, I murmured, fingers tightening around the paper. For now, Raina replied. Doctors say she's fragile. Stress caught up with her. I leaned back, exhaling slow. Then the Lord can decide her ending. I already said my piece. Raina studied me for a moment. You ain't scared she'll come after you again? I looked out into the night where lightning flickered faint in the distance. No, you can't haunt a woman who's already faced her worst day. Inside, the grandfather clock struck midnight. For the first time, Delphine's whisper didn't sound like a curse, just the last gasp of a woman who'd already lost everything. Spring came early that year. The dogwoods bloomed white across the Booker property, and sunlight spilled through the kitchen just the way Eddie liked it, soft, golden, forgiving. The courthouse dust had settled. The reporters were gone, and for the first time in 2 years, peace didn't feel borrowed. It felt earned. Brielle stood in the yard, helping workers repaint the faded sign that once read Booker and Sons Shipping. Now it read Booker and Daughters. Her laughter carried across the gravel, lighter than I'd heard it in years. Inside, I sorted through old files, deciding what would stay and what would finally go. Eddie's ledger stayed. Of course it did. Beside it, I placed a framed photo of him, smiling in that stubborn way that said he always knew how things would turn out. Raina stopped by with coffee and updates. "The foundation paperwork's approved," she said. "The Booker Trust Fund for Victims of Family Fraud. Your name's on every page," I smiled. "Let it stay that way. Maybe our pain can teach somebody else to keep their eyes open before it's too late." Outside, Brielle came in, face flushed from work. "Mama," she said softly. "We did it." She slid a folder across the table. The Booker Honor Code for vendors. No third-party consolidation, transparent quotes, direct pay only, and a hotline for brides who feel hustled. "If they want our name on a flyer," she said, "they sign this first." I signed it, then watched her email it to every florist, caterer, and venue in 100 miles. In our family, love stopped being a vibe and became a policy. Brielle exhaled, steadier now. "Daddy's name is clean." I took her hand. "We didn't just clear his name, baby. We built something stronger from what they tried to destroy." A breeze moved through the curtains, and for just a moment, I swear I caught the scent of Eddie's aftershave, cedar and soap, like a quiet blessing. I looked toward the horizon. "Rest easy now, love. The house is whole again." The magnolia trees swayed in answer, their leaves whispering the kind of peace you don't beg for, the kind you fight for, and finally win. If you liked this story, please like, subscribe, and share it. If you have a unique story of your own, share it in the comments below. Thank you for listening.